Thank you, Maciej. And first of all, Maciej, thank you for bringing us all together here. Yeah, I've seen over almost a decade that I now work full-time in crypto in Switzerland, how events like these are what brings people together, what brings ideas forward, what brings the bad ideas out to light, and the good ideas, which is very important. So thank you very much, Maciej, for making this happen. And yeah, my name is Sebastian, I'm VP Tech at Gnosis, and today I want to talk about a little bit something practical that you can actually use and show you, some of these really nice values that we just heard from the Ethereum Foundation presentation, how they transpire into real applications and use cases. For my context here, who here has a crypto wallet? And a crypto wallet is not Coinbase, is not Kraken, is not Binance. Okay, cool, all right. Now that's a quite involved audience. I'm trying to show for the ones who are maybe also not so deep in how you can get there and why that matters. So I will talk a little bit about what is behind this one. But before we get there, let's look at tech in general. I came here today by Uber in the same way how I would get to a venue by Uber in New York, in Berlin, in Tokyo, right? When I listen to music, the same thing. When I watch movies, the same thing. When I talk to my social network, the same thing. Why are banks still local? Well, what is banking anyway, right? So banking is actually a bunch of things, like a bunch of layers that I just depicted here, and we will briefly dive into all of them and how crypto makes a difference on all of those, and then think about how we can transform this stack of issues and problems and solutions into a crypto world. So how do we get here? Well, it's been a long while, right? So banking has been one of the core technologies that brought humanity forward for quite a while, and that's been going quite nice. And yeah, if we zoom into the more contemporary region, we've seen how we first had internet banks that were basically using technology to maximize profits. We then had neobanks, which is great technologies, but still, basically working on top of legacy infrastructure. And our claim is that we're entering the ownership era. And in an ownership era where users regain control over their financial assets and data, if we want it or not, there are new paradigms. And I think that is an opportunity because why are these banks still local are actually problems that financial regulations differ by country, payment rails tend to differ by country, and user behaviors also differ by country. And no single bank seems to have solved this problem, and frankly, nobody seems to be interested in really solving that. We had all the technologies to solve that for at least 40 years, and we don't, right? Now, my bold claim is crypto's actually solving an HR issue, because instead of getting people to work for your bank and solve the issue, you now have the smartest nerds on the planet that work unpaid to solve this issue in free and open source technologies. There's something psychological in there which I find fascinating. Anyway, how can it look like? Next gen banking. I will talk a little bit about how we at Gnosis, and more specifically at Gnosis Pay, are kind of dissecting this stack of financial technologies and look at the solutions behind them, and then wherever you work, think about how you fit in and what you want to do and how you want to interface these more or less open technologies. So starting from layer one, storing value, we are working with an on-chain smart account. The on-chain smart account is called Safe. I'll show you later on a little bit how it works. It's a spin-off from Gnosis that is currently securing around $60 billion worth of assets. And that smart account sits on a chain, and that one has not been hacked. Some user interfaces obviously had issues, some users had issues, but the smart account has never gotten compromised. So that is the bedrock of the storage of value. Identity and compliance, we obviously need in the picture if we want to have the fancy card that I showed on my title slide. So compliance toolbox that facilitates identity and compliance without basically just creating a walled gardens and still being open. And that is sometimes a bit harder. Now for payments, having both global and local payments is something that we're interested in. And yeah, it's building around a self-custodial Visa debit card. And finally, receiving income, borrowing and credit, and saving and wealth building, which is kind of the core of DeFi, right? So we heard this, you might have seen in a presentation before, this three-letter abbreviation DEXs, which stands for Decentralized Exchanges, which is really ownerless technology that manages money. We don't just use that to swap one asset for another, but also to borrow assets, and that creates yield. It creates yield because there's always crazy people who want to gamble and go long. That requires assets, and you can earn the yield from those people. So yeah, that's quite good, and connecting these technologies and being open to that provides a seamless interface all the way from the asset that you store on your on-chain smart account, a tokenized representation of cash money that can seamlessly interoperate with DeFi protocols. And that, what to me is the holy grail, and I think we are pretty close to it. Now, Gnosis launched this self-custodial Visa debit card about 1.5 years ago, and I'll just give a brief overview of what has happened since then. We processed over 1 million payments, more than 115,000 merchants accepted Gnosis Pay in 10,000 cities in most parts of the globe. And yeah, that is basically all enabled by using an on-chain self-custodial smart account. But we're not a neobank, right? So we don't want to be a neobank. Gnosis Chain is here to build infrastructure. I won't go into too much of the technical details of it. There's a chain in the background, which is called Gnosis Chain, which is an exact mirror of Ethereum. In fact, Gnosis is the second biggest contributor to Ethereum client developers after Ethereum Foundation. So we are very much aligned with all that's happening in the Ethereum research and development world. And yeah, want to now open up not just to the technical folks who build directly on chain, but also others who are interfacing traditional financial rails. So what do I mean by that? So Gnosis Pay as a product has an API that is currently facing individual wallets, and we have several partner wallets. Zeal is European, Picnic is in South America, and Metri is something that we develop internally within Gnosis. And yeah, that's our approach to building for an open internet and more than just open finance. So how does this actually look like? This is my Metri account, app.metri.xyz. I invite you all to check it out. You currently in that version need an invite. I'm happy to facilitate that in the next break. You see I have my card account linked, I have my wallet linked in there. You can top it up with a quite aggressive cashback. Is that sustainable? No, probably not. So come soon and activate your card. Yeah, and all of that is actually happening inside this Metri wallet, right? So what I mean with Metri wallet, if you go in another interface called app.gnosispay.com, where you can manage your card, you see my account has a bunch of owners. That's kind of interesting, right? So that's what I mean with self-custodial, right? So these are accounts, they're wallets that I control. I have a hardware wallet, and I have some other accounts. So if I use my phone, right, and my phone is gone, I can still access my money. If Gnosis Pay disappears tomorrow, right, we heard before from Matthew on business continuity. If Gnosis Pay disappears tomorrow and rugs me, it is not as it happened to me in 2014 when Mt. Gox, the biggest exchange on the planet, closed doors on me and I lost all my Bitcoin. No, I can go onto the blockchain and move my assets. Yes, that has to happen with a 3-minute delay because otherwise I couldn't swipe my card in the shop and get instant payment, but I can get my money out and don't wait for it 10 years and get 10% back, as happens in the legacy world because, you know, laws and regulations did not protect me or any other of the individuals that lost significant amount of wealth that was then spent in a decade of bankruptcy proceedings. Technology is what protects people. And I think that is a fundamental improvement, and this is how it looks like. Now, digging one level deeper, if you also see in here my Gnosis Pay safe, right? You see my Pay safe. This is the address of my safe. What is kind of cool is, like, I blanked it out here, sorry. I'm also a privacy person. Like, you do see here how an IBAN and an on-chain address live side by side. So this account can be used to make SEPA payments, as well as card payments, as well as on-chain transfers of a stable token, which in my case, you've seen before, is a euro-denominated stable token, right? So I find that quite cool. I find this here quite legacy. I use more the upper part. It's fine if you see it the other way around. This caters to everyone. Now, let's look at this one, right? So let's look at my Gnosis Pay safe. My Gnosis Pay safe here can also be inspected on gnosisscan.io, which is a block explorer where you can see, it's kind of like the phone book for blockchains, right? Or the Google for blockchains. This one is for Gnosis chain. You can see all my transactions, you can see your token holdings, you can see everything that's going on there. For the ones who are wondering, yes, Sebastian, isn't this more a bug than a feature? Yes, we're aware of that. And again, some of the smartest folks of our generation are working on that in the Ethereum ecosystem to fixing the privacy issues of that without taking away the accountability and kind of cheat-proofness of it. All right, so that's my account on Gnosis Scan. And I told you that, okay, if Gnosis Pay were to disappear, I have the assurance that I can still move my money. But how do I actually do that, right? So if gnosispay.com is offline, then app.gnosispay.com is also offline. Am I rugged again? Well, no, I could go to app.safe.global and still move my assets. This is, again, the same account. You see what I have on my wallet here, and you can still move your assets around. And if you really want the ultimate hardcore version of it, you run your node at home or in your company, on premises, however you want to, and you will always be able to have access to your own money. Because this is self-custody. This is what I mean with ownership era. This is something that we never had before. Now, it's not just that you can look at your money, right? We looked at the other stacks of technologies that people typically appreciate of banks. It is also swapping one asset for another. And this here is swap.cow.fi. CowSwap is something that tries to feed back the negative externalities of trading, such as front-running, back-running, sandwich attacks, and more, to the user, which again is very cool. Because if we think about Robinhood and all basically these games are played in neobanks, in old banks, in old Wall Street, in new Wall Street in the same way. Traders screw the little investor. We now have democratized technology which allows us, and this is a practical example, and you can look at the trade volume behind it in real time, how you can turn this into a game where those traders, we call them solvers here, are competing against one another and feeding back the profits to the individual user. And again, I find it very cool. Now in this example, this is basically buying a tokenized representation of the core SP500. And yeah, you can do that 24/7. You can do that 7 days a week. And you can do it for any small amounts. You see the fees are pretty small. In this case, you see actually a kind of green 0.7% profit. So this is a profit that actually gets fed back to me. So there was actually an ARB opportunity, and the solvers competing against one another were kind of forced to feed that back to me. So I actually make money buying SPX, which is kind of cool again. All right. Now, what is actually going on here? Like, what is actually this financial product that I'm engaging with here? There are players such as BactFi on Gnosis chain, which take tokenized representation of stocks and make them tradable. And that is what I had there on the previous screen in CowSwap. Yeah, so this is a product that is offered by them, but then again, as an example, seamlessly tradable on decentralized exchanges, right? So there's no intermediaries beyond the tokenization. Obviously, the tokenization is happening in this case by BactFi. You can read on the website who their custodian and issuers are. but it is seamlessly interoperable with DeFi. And finally, if that was not sufficient kind of DeFi degeneracy, the last example I'm going to leave you with here is this balancer pool. So what is this? This is an automated market maker which algorithmically kind of keeps this pool such that you can always buy and sell. Right? You can always buy and sell this SPX tracker here. Maybe the price isn't great, but you will always have liquidity. And people are constantly working on improving these algorithms behind these automated market makers in a trustless fashion that you have liquidity. And the cool thing here that I just want to highlight is you have a token pairing between this backed tokenized SPX and SDAI, which is a yield-bearing version of a tokenized US dollar. Now, that is pretty cool because you can provide liquidity. Again, you can provide liquidity with $1. Yeah, you don't need to have a huge firm and like lawyers and all that stuff. You can, of course, also, right? This is not excluding any of the biggest market makers on the planet to engage in this also. But I can come in with $1 and market make, which I find, again, very cool. So yeah, here you have the possibility to basically provide liquidity of a yield-bearing representation of a US dollar stable token and SPX and earn on trading fees, but also on the underlying yield. So this is what sometimes people call money Lego, right? You build things on one another. This is the flywheel of DeFi, and this is why we see these massive numbers that we've seen earlier on, because you can interoperate. So yeah, I hope that leaves you with some ideas of how we can take banking to the ownership era. And with that, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for having us here.